This video tutorial will walk you through all the necessary steps to create the cow catcher for the front of the miniature toy train. We're going to create a new standard IPT and a new 2D sketch on the XZ plane. As soon as I do that, it will rotate the plane so that the top reads incorrectly. I want to rotate it one time counterclockwise until the word top reads correct. I'm going to pan over and zoom in a little bit because the first part I'm going to start off with is fairly small. I'm going to start with a 2-point rectangle, and it's going to be 1.8 inches wide, the full cow catcher, and only 0.25 deep, just the small little rectangular section along the back. Now, with that shape, I'm going to go ahead and draw a vertical line from the middle out. I'm not going to necessarily worry about its length yet. I'll put that on here in a minute. That line has defined the middle of this rectangle. I'll now use my line tool to create the pointed part of the cow catcher. I'll now put a dimension from the back of the cow catcher all the way to the front of the cow catcher of 1 inch. And I can see right now that I'm fully constrained. Because I'm going to try to loft this section up to the top, a loft will not like all three of these being broken into individual components. So I'm going to grab those 3 lines and turn them into construction lines. Finish sketch. I'm now going to pull an offset work plane of the XZ up a full distance of the cow catcher's height of 0.75. I'll do a new sketch on that work plane. Now, one of the harder parts about this cow catcher is trying to make sure that the top section and the bottom section are centered on each other. So I'm going to do some project geometry. I'm going to project geometry of both the construction lines and this line across the back. So I have the line across the back projected, I have the rectangular line that was hidden, and this front center line. With that, I'm going to use my 2-point rectangle. I'm going to find the middle, and I'm going to come out to that construction line. I'll do the same thing on this side. I'm going to use the symmetry tool, or the symmetric tool, to try to make sure that both of those rectangles are the same on each side. With the symmetric tool, it says select your first sketch element, that'll be this side, select my second sketch element, that will be this side, and then select the line of symmetry. Now both of those are the same on each side. I'll now use my line tool to make the diagonal and use my line tool to finish the diagonal. I now should be able to put on some dimensions to lock this into place. I know I have a full width across the top of 1.2. And from back to the front, I have a full depth of 0.75. That really should make those 2 lines parallel to each other, and I could have just used the parallel option to try to make them parallel to each other. And again, because I'm going to loft it, I need to make sure that all of these lines in here are construction lines. So I'll highlight these lines, make them construction lines. Go to Finish Sketch, and I should be able to loft the bottom section up to the top section. And because I made them hidden lines, it doesn't see them as separate elements. And say OK. Great. I'll turn the visibility off of that work plane, and we'll start working on some of the individual components. Now, before I start working on these little windows that go into the front and the pins that go on the back, I'm going to hollow the entire thing out. So I'm going to flip it so I can see the bottom, and I'll use my shell tool. With the shell tool, I need a shell distance that shows right here in the print of 0.1. I already have 0.1 since that's the default. I also want to open the bottom of the cow catcher, so I'll select that face. Select the little check mark. So now that we can see that I have 0.1 wall thickness all the way around the entire part. I'll now do a 2D sketch on one of the faces. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to project geometry of that face for an offset. I'll grab my offset tool and grab that shape, and it shows here in the print that I have 0.1 all the way around TYP, or typical. That should be fully constrained because I used the offset. Finish sketch and extrude. Unfortunately, the dimension I want right now is not shown in the print. It shows me that the remaining portion is 0.05. If I know that the entire thing is 0.1, the remaining portion is 0.05, that tells me that it's centered, so 0.05 from the front will give me a 0.05 from the back. Select OK. Now, I could go ahead and just repeat that same process on the other side, but I'd like to take this opportunity to use my mirror pattern again. So, I'll say plane, and I'm going to click this front edge. I'll come over to my work origins, and I need to choose the YZ, or the plane that's standing up and down. Because I selected an edge in a plane, it's given me the opportunity to pivot that plane. I want a degree of 0. Now that I have that plane, I should be able to mirror that cutout across my plane that's in the center, and it should repeat that pattern for me. Great. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this work plane, and I'm going to rotate the part around so that we can see the back. I'll do a new sketch on the back, and I'm going to create a line that goes from middle, the green dot, to middle, the bottom dot. I do want to make that a construction line. I'm now going to use my center point circle and create 3 circles. One on that line. Now you can see as I'm moving around the part, it's trying to grab geometry from the other side of the part or the inside of the part that it thinks I might want to be linking onto. I want to make sure that when I click, I don't have any of those highlighted. Do the same thing here. We'll do the same thing here. Now there's an extra little blue line that's on my screen that's not really there. Once I go ahead and select OK, you'll see that it disappears. It's just kind of there temporarily for me to lock onto. I'm going to use my equal constraint and click on all 3 circles. So 1, and then the other set. Now all 3 circles are equal to each other. Great, I can see from the print that I have a dimension of 0.625 to the center point of that first pin. I have a diameter that's typical of all the pins of 0.125. The diameter is not actually called out on the part very well. I can see that they have a width of this as a diameter of 0.125, but it's over here in this little cut view, which makes it a little bit confusing. I also have a dimension from this dot over to this dot of 1.25. It also shows me that I have a dimension from the center over 0.625. I then have a dimension up 0.125, and a final dimension on the other side of 0.125. Now there's a whole lot of dimensions there that really weren't necessary. I could have done that a lot quicker. I'm going to show you, I'm going to hit undo a couple times just to show you a real quick tool again, is that symmetrical tool. If I had used that symmetry tool and clicked on both circles and then the middle, they would have already been centered on each other, and I would have only had to put one dimension across the bottom, 0.125, would have locked the entire thing into play. So there's a lot of those dimensions that aren't really necessary to locking some of this into place or fully constraining it. So, regardless, I'll finish sketch. I'm going to extrude those 3 pins, a typical distance of 0.125. The The last thing I have to do is put the small chamfers on the end of each one of those pins. We'll be able to do that all in one shot. We'll do chamfer, select all of the pins. I can see right now that I have that yellow exclamation mark letting me know in one way or another that there's some kind of error with it. And it just happens to be that the chamfer's too large currently for the diameter of the pin that's there. I have a chamfer of 0.01 at 45 degrees. So we know we can leave this as D1, D1, and select OK. That's everything that's necessary to create the cow catcher.